My favorite kind of games in World of Warships Legends to play are those where I have to make a series of interesting choices, and the totality of these choices adds up to contributing to a victory. Those are my favorite kind of games to play, and the game you're about to see is one such game. We're playing the Tier 7 Premium American Battleship USS Georgia, one of my very favorite ships in the game at this point, and one I have covered extensively on this channel. I apologize if you're tired of seeing Georgia content, but this one ends with a Kraken, so I think it's worth watching, and the choices I make are interesting. At least I think so. So I want to just get right into it. We're spawned south of this Bravo cap and we're heading west. We kind of want to get on the outside of the map, sort of around the Bravo cap. We want to spread out. That's our initial goal here. And we've got a Richelieu in our sights pushing in. We're holding our fire though for two reasons. Number one, we don't want to give up our position right now, and number two, if we do shoot at the Richelieu, the results are not going to be, I don't think, as worth it. Plus, we were waiting to see if he was going to turn his bow more toward the Charlie cap and give broadside to our position. Ultimately, he didn't. We got distracted by the Atlantico there, who was giving us flat broadside. Missed our opportunity to shoot him, but Heinrich is sighted. So we take our first shot of the game at Heinrich. This is something that I would like to see more Battleship players practice, honestly, is restraint, especially in their initial salvo. Just because you see something doesn't mean you need to instantly shoot it. Unfortunately, our salvo against the Heinrich was less than spectacular. We've only done about 4,000 damage, but things are starting to develop. We've got a destroyer in Charlie who has taken up a very good defensive position. You can see his bow is pointed outside of the cap, so he can hopefully easily disengage if things get too hot and heavy, which it looks like they are, because we've got that Richelieu entered the cap now, and the teammates around our destroyer in Charlie really aren't in a good position to support him. They're all three almost in the exact same grid square, which means their firing angles on the cap are exactly the same. This is not what you want. You want things to be more spread out. Meanwhile, my team on this side, we've also got a destroyer in the Bravo cap who, again, is taking a good defensive position with his bow facing away from the cap, but he's lost basically all of his health, and a Zara is pushing in. The battleship next to me gets a great hit on the Zara, and we're able to finish him off for the first blood, and there's our first kill of the game. 1 of 5. Our destroyer is, well, he was safe until the USS Black appeared, which is a destroyer that does, of course, have radar, and I think somehow this Black is going to end our destroyer right there. You see, he's sort of retreating, but the Black is going to catch him and sink him. And then we're going to be down a Kagero on this side and have no destroyer support for this cap. So things are going to be shaping up to be not so great in the beginning of this battle. After all, destroyers as a class are really the ones that ultimately decide games, and they're also the eyes and ears of the team. So when you lose a Kagero this quickly, and the enemy destroyer is able to slip into a cap, you're already at a major disadvantage. Now, me, the Foudre over here, and the two cruisers really don't have any support. We are going to need to spot all of our targets on this side of the map with our own faces, and that's not ideal. Meanwhile, on the other side of the map, our last remaining destroyer is trying to contest the cap, but again, the support he has over there is less than ideal. He's got two battleships sharing the same grid square, which essentially means they're firing from exactly the same angle, and that is not useful. That is terrible positioning in battleships. No offense to these players, but you never want to put two battleships next to each other. And the cruiser is not much further away from the battleship, so he's all firing from the same angle. And that means every enemy inside that cap only really has to defend themselves from that part of the map. It'd be much better if these guys spread out around the cap to support that destroyer. But the destroyer is going to remain alive and do a very good job in remaining alive. He's obviously dealing damage to that Richelieu. There's another destroyer in there. He's going to play a great game in spite of his, I think, less than ideal support. Although, to be fair, I'm not playing on that side of the map, so I kind of can't see. I am playing on this side of the map, though, and you can see my two cruisers and the food dray gathering together in a single grid square, heading more toward the Charlie cap. I am going to deliberately choose not to do that because I want to spread out from my teammates as much as possible. I don't want to be anywhere near my battleship. I haven't been able to get any kind of distance between myself and La Foudre, but now I can. And the more distance I can get between myself and other friendly battleships on my team, the more likely I am to be able to create crossfires. And by the way, yet another reason to build for concealment on your battleships. Our approach to these islands over here was concealed. We were trying to get around the Richelieu, hoping he would turn and give us broadside. Ultimately, that doesn't pan out, but we would have been spotted by the Richelieu much sooner had we not spec'd for concealment in our build, and thus the Richelieu would have been able to shoot us. We got a Heinrich coming around the corner now, tier 6 battleship. The Heinrich stands literally no chance against the Georgia, nor does any tier 6 battleship. They all have overmatchable plating in a lot of places, and so this Heinrich can point his bow at me, and, well, we can just go right through it for 13,000 damage. He's pushing in now. He's aiming at my teammates. La Foudre, for whatever reason, has elected to push straight into the cap, despite the fact that there is a destroyer there. This, I think, is not a good idea, but on the bright side, he has distracted Heinrich. For whatever reason, Heinrich thinks he needs to support at or shoot at Foudre, so he's going to give me broadside, and we're going to take advantage of that broadside, removing 21,000 more of his hit points. So he's basically got no health now, and he should be, you would think, fairly easy to take out. But of course, RNG needs to cooperate in some sense in order for us to accomplish that. Heinrich is now pushing toward Foudre, who is inside of the cap. One of our cruisers has gone down to the battleships, and the other cruiser is retreating, heading over to Charlie to link up with the rest of the team, who now only have to face, well, it looks like both enemy destroyers inside of that cap. The rest of the enemy team is comprised of battleships, and all of the battleships are over here on this Bravo side of the map. Although, a lot of battleships, well, two of them, are very northward, and we're very southward. In fact, we're almost at the map border. Heinrich takes down Foudre, so that leaves us the only ship left alive on this map. We take down Heinrich. There's our second kill. What are we going to do now? Well, what we're not going to do is go over toward the rest of our team. Why not? Because again, there are 3 battleships there. They are all almost in the same grid square, and this is ineffective battleship positioning. What we are going to do is remain on this side of the map. Why? Well, because we've got the last 3 remaining enemy battleships pushing south. We were spotted. They know we're here, and, well, let's face it, ladies and gentlemen, I do have 7,000 subscribers on this channel. Thank you so much for your support over the years, by the way. And thus, my name, I suppose, is somewhat recognizable to people when they're playing World of Warships Legends, and I think oftentimes they want to go after me, especially if they maybe see me playing a ship I really love, like the Georgia. So we've got Richelieu, and we've got Atlantico pushing in toward my position, sort of. They can probably see my teammates on the other side, so they're shooting at them. And once again, concealment coming in handy. We spot Atlantico and Richelieu well before they spot us, allowing us to conduct a turn to point our stern at the Richelieu. And now as the Atlantico turns toward our teammates in the Charlie cap to try and deal with them, he is giving us broadside. This is Crossfires 101. Atlantico feels he needs to angle against the multiple battleships in Charlie, and thus he gives broadside to my position here south of Bravo. He can alternatively choose to angle towards me, and then, as a consequence, he would be giving broadside to the battleships in Charlie. This is why you spread battleships out. This is why you do not put them in the same grid square. Atlantico has realized he cannot afford to give broadside to me. He's gone behind that island there, and now we're thinking of what do we do? Maybe we shoot at the Richelieu, although the Richelieu is zero threat to us. He's pushing into us as we are kiting away from him. He's now shooting HE because he's realized his AP is ineffective, and basically he is a non-threat to us right now. So we're going to continue shooting at the Atlantico, who we've taken a lot of hit points from. It's forced him to retreat from his push toward our teammates, and he's on very low health now. Our teammates are helping a little bit in taking down more of his hit points. We've got another battleship pushing in toward the north of Bravo, and we've got one of the destroyers in Bravo. Our teammates, though, the combined effort of all of the rest of them, have managed to take the Charlie Cap, and unfortunately, we've lost our last destroyer. So we're in a bit of a pickle here. We've got 3 battleships left, 2 of them in the Charlie Cap. But so long as I remain in this position and take the attention of both the Atlantico and the Richelieu, it means those 2 battleships only have to deal with the last enemy battleship who's pushing into Bravo, and by the way, giving broadside to one of my teammates, you can see there on the map, and also the 2 destroyers. We take down the Atlantico, and now we can turn our attention to the Richelieu, who has been lighting us on fire, of course. And I do want to point something out about this, because I think a lot of Battleship players in my position, if they were playing the same game as me, instead of turning away from the Richelieu and the Atlantico and kiting in the direction I did, I think they would have turned around and tried to bow tank the Richelieu, which would be ridiculous and foolish to do in this situation. Why? Well, basically in any situation where you're in a 2v1 duel with anything, there is no universe in which you want to turn bow in to both of those ships and try to bow tank them. Why? Because it completely limits your maneuverability and basically renders you a stationary target. And then those ships can push into you, and things like rams start happening and all the rest of it. If you kite away and point your stern at the enemy that's pushing into you, it's basically the same thing as bow tanking, except you preserve your maneuverability and you exert a greater degree of control over the engagement, because you can decide if you want to slow down, speed up, you can turn, you can change direction, you can shoot at other targets. Meanwhile, the enemy ship has to push into you, and they don't have any kind of opportunity to ram you or anything like that. And note, we're doing something that I think a lot of Battleship players would regard as crazy. We're switching to HE, and we're now shooting that at the Richelieu. We've lit 1 fire on him. He's about to use damage control. We take a calculated risk in making a broadside turn right in front of him, but he was shooting HE at us, so it was a risk that paid off. He was not able to get AP into our broadside, and only now, this late into the game, do we actually start to push bow in towards something. Richelieu is on a little bit less than half health. We've still got the HE chambered, and we're going to release a salvo right at his bow, which hits him for decent damage and also starts 2 permafires that he can now not put out. If we had shot AP against him, we might have gotten some damage into his superstructure, but this fire damage is going to pay dividends. 2 permafires on this guy burning for the full 60-second duration is going to remove a lot of HP. And thankfully, this Richelieu has not decided that he wants to try to ram. He, like me, is going for the drive-by. So we get a good shot into his broadside there, but he gets a good shot into us, and then we sort of mess up with the rear turret as we go past. But that's okay. Sometimes you screw up drive-bys, and when that happens, what you absolutely don't do is continue to turn so you can keep your guns on target. No. Look what we're doing. We're straightening out. We've got our stern pointed at the Richelieu. We're not turning to give him broadside. We're simply waiting for the rear turret, which is all we need, to get on target, and then we'll finish off the Richelieu. He shoots at us, but since we aren't giving him broadside, he only gets overpens in the superstructure, and he's broadside to us, so he dies. And plus we get the Arsonist medal. So if you want to tell me that the HE was not a good choice there, well, you only get the Arsonist medal if you remove a crap ton of hit points with fire. And that's what we did to the Richelieu. And our teammates on the other side, this really has been a team effort. I did criticize their positioning, which I think was poor during the duration of this game, but it has to be said that they all together were able to take that Charlie Cap, and thus we were able to remain competitive with the enemy team. But I submit to you, ladies and gentlemen, that we absolutely would not have won this game had I not kept the position that I did throughout the entirety of this map, or game rather. If I had not been there, well, I certainly would not have gotten that Kraken, and I don't think the Richelieu and Atlantico would have been tied up. They would have simply pushed into my teammates, overwhelmed them, and I think we would have lost. So even though I come in third on the leaderboard behind the Brandenburg, who, even though I criticized his positioning, did have a great game, in part because I think he got a lot of damage on DDs and got a cap ribbon. So GG to him, and GG to the Benson, who spent a lot of time trying to take that Bravo cap, ultimately died in pursuit, but still managed to have a good game. I think this was a pretty good team effort, and I think the choices I made were pretty interesting. Hope you enjoyed it. If so, give it a thumbs up, consider subscribing if you haven't already, and I'll see you next time. Goodbye.